Hi, I'm Andrew Armstrong and welcome to the Back Office Teardown Lab. Here is Stuart Ashens' board. You might have seen it on an earlier video when we were playing with the super gun. The problem with it, if you recall from that video, there was some slightly jittery video. The super gun is connected and unfortunately you can see there's a problem on this board because it's a bit jittery. Every now and then it sort of freaks out a bit. So that's something that I'm going to be exploring, I think. So I've been doing a lot of investigation on this board and it's been a bit of a nightmare, to be honest with you. I started from the composite sync output, which is here, basically at this resistor, it goes out here. And I had to trace that through this hex inverter here, then a hex inverter with Schmidt trigger, and then it routes across the PCB underneath, comes across to here, and eventually ends up in this, which is a custom chip, which is the Technos TJ002, which is tricky because at this point, you know, you're absolutely stuffed in terms of repairing it, you know, because how do you get hold of one of these chips? The camera doesn't even want to focus on it, it's so elusive. Now, what I noticed was, though, and I just sort of fluxed it up to clean it, basically, because I thought, okay, I'm going to have a go at just reflowing this. In for a penny, in for a pound. There's not much I can lose now out on this. Well, Stuart might if I totally ruin it, but, you know, I think a half-working game is no good. So you're better off risking it. But, and as inspecting it, I'm going to really try hard to try to focus on this. It's going to be tricky, so bear with me. Come on now, you can do it. You can. No, you can't. Camera doesn't like it. Now, the reason it's having difficulty, by the way, is because I've got an oscilloscope here, so everything's raised really high to the camera. But what I wanted to show you was here, this chip looks like it's been reworked, and actually the last bunch of pins are actually hovering over the PCB. So someone soldered the very end pin, but it's almost too high. It's very odd. So there's some flex there, and looking at it, I can actually, pretty sure I can see like daylight through there. Imagine I'm seeing daylight. So I think the best thing I can do is try to reflow this one. Again, not knowing if that's going to fix it, but certainly nothing to lose. So I'm going to prep that up and then, yeah, you can see me doing that. So first off, I'm just going to apply a flux. This is a gel type flux, and I'm just going to run it along the edges of all the legs. Because, of course, it's quite a big die on this. It's a big chip, so you're going to want to heat it basically all at the same time. Just squeezing that out. And if you can get these gel fluxes, they're really good. They can be a bit dear, but they're absolutely worth every penny if you're doing any surface mount stuff. So I'm going to put on the hot air blower. You might hear some noise. Don't be alarmed. And I'm just going to work it around. So the flux is starting to melt. I'm trying to you're trying to warm the PCB, the chip, the die, everything. I'm just going to put a little bit more focus on these because I want that flux to start getting through. Just working it slowly. So if I get something like a bit of solder here, there's a point where the solder ought to kind of melt. You're not out there quite there yet, but you'll see it, you'll know it. and I can see it just there. So now we're going to put the hot air into cooling mode. And we'll leave that there for a few moments just to cool down, and then we'll plug it all back in. Right, so the board is all back connected up to the JAMMA connector, and you can hear the music playing in the background. However, uh-oh, SpaghettiOs, still not quite the image we were hoping for. So you can see now we've got a little bit of funk going on, but definitely seems to point that that is definitely the custom chip messing with the graphics. So the only thing left for me to do now is go through pin by pin, basically the soldering iron, make sure every connection is down on that board. That's pretty much the best I can do. Interestingly enough though, you'll see some graphics appear on the screen and some don't. So if I go push the button right now, hang on, so you can see that flickering right now. It's very interesting because the on-screen display text is pretty much okay, and then it's the game graphics are flickering. So it does maybe imply that this could be some blending of graphics or different memory banks, something like that. Let's have another little solder on this and see if we can get it any better. Ooh, look at that. Looky there. Don't know if you can see that. But there's definitely... Come on, focus. Doesn't like this board at all, does it? Does not like the board. But there's a burn there. Look, scorch. Scorchio! Right. We've got a lot of work to do now. So for me today, the story just seems to be getting worse and worse. So there is this scorched pad here. So there's a pad, and you can see it's just coppery. It's a copper colour because it's lost the sort of varnish that goes on top. And it is a little bit crinkly, wrinkly. But it does seem to have continuity. So it's got continuity, which is a kind of annoyance. But it does give us the opportunity now to clean up this whole footprint, flip the board over, make sure everything's okay on the other side. Kind of annoying, but there's not much we can do at this point. I mean, this is the board that just keeps on giving. So let's continue the process. I mean, if you're doing this at home, I mean, you've not really got much choice at this point. These custom chips are hard to get hold of. So the best you can do really is just work with it, clean up your board, and sort of just keep going. You know, you can stop at any time. If you stop, you end up with a non-working game, so you haven't really gained anything. But by continuing, you really don't have much to lose. So I'm just cleaning up these pads with some solder braid, and you've got to be very careful with these pads because they're not really meant for rework. So you see here I've got a few stuck. Now when you have your solder braid stuck to the board like that, do not pull it, because you're likely to yank off a bunch of pads. So just put on extra flux on that and just heat the whole thing up. Just hold it there till it's ready to come by itself. There we go. And depending on the sort of pads you've got, sometimes if you want to clean them, you can just sort of clean them in the direction of the pad too. That works really well. So I'm just going to work my way around now, just make sure all of them are free from any bumps and lumps, because we're going to have to solder that chip back on soon enough. But after that I'll flip this over and just make sure the other side's okay, because you've got a lot of through-hole wires here really. We want to make sure nothing's gone through to the other side. And where we had that bit of coppery coloured track, I'm actually just putting a tiny bit of solder on it because that'll thicken it out a bit. Just give it an extra bit, make it a little bit more robust. So I've checked the other side of the board, it was okay. There was one sort of wire there that had a blob of solder hanging off it, so what I did was just dab that with a soldering iron just to make sure it was down. So what I'm going to do now is just clean this up, and I'm using the old tissue technique. Just put your bit of blue roll or whatever, sort of reasonably solid-y type tissue-y crepe paper type material. You don't want something that's going to disintegrate. And just rub that in there, because you want to make sure you get all of the old flux off there and filth, so you can have a nice look at that, because it's nice and clean after that point. And I'm really going to work this with my hands because it's nice and smooth. Luckily on this board, and a lot of these old boards really, you don't get too many tiny surface mount components around. In fact, if you think about it, these big ICs are really the only surface mount components on this board. And just so you know, as part of the testing of this, I didn't show you doing it, but I checked all of the crystals and things like that, you see there, and yeah, everything, all those are running fine. So it does seem to be, whatever the issue is, it's down to this bad boy here. Let's give it one more go. So hopefully its legs won't be too bent. I mean, that could be the issue, of course, that it won't want to sit flat. I can feel here, just a touch when I feel here, there's a couple of little bumps. So I'm just going to make sure they're nice and flat. I mean, it's kind of nice in the way we've got these tins now. You want to really make sure you don't have any sticking up too much. So let's have a look at our IC here. It's got a bit of flux still on it. And that's how it looks. And there's pin 1 right there, and you can see the board. There's a little cutaway edge there, which is also pin 1. So that'll have to sit like so. Now, in the previous placement of this wasn't quite right, if you recall. It was a little bit twisted and lifted. So now's our opportunity, though, to really sight this up as best we can. And I'm afraid the only way you can really do that is by eye. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn off the camera because I'm going to have to get real close and you'll see my head, and I'm going to push this down and tack some opposing corners once they're all in alignment, and then I think we might just reflow each pin one at a time. We might not do the hot air, we'll just do it with soldering iron. See you back here in a minute. So to cut a long story short, I've soldered pins all around the edge now. So I'm just going to now get some of the old solder, and I know this would be bloody good zoomed in, but I really apologise for that today. Just the old oscilloscope is on the bench, and I'm just going to hand solder every pin. So I'm just literally going to place the tiniest amount of solder on the tip, and get up close and personal with every pin on this, because that's the only way I can ensure that it will be done to my satisfaction. So this might take some time. Cleaning, 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 always bloody cleaning, always bloody cleaning these boards. This better work, or it's going make me berserk and gonna end up trashed. Shiny, shiny and clean. No! Curse you! Curse you! Now I don't know if it's that chip anymore. I'm pretty sure that chip is unhappy, but crikey, now I need to check other chips on this if I really want to get to the bottom of this. And frankly, I don't know if it's worthwhile. Still, stay tuned for the saga of the Technos WWF game board thing. Get up! Get up! Hi, it's me, Andrew, and I'm talking to you from my streaming setup, and you can see I'm looking rather tired. That's because I've literally been all day messing with this board. It's become an obsession for no good reason. However, I would like to just add one thing. Thank you to all my patrons this month, because you've really supported the channel, and actually it's allowed me to buy a few tools to help me with this debugging session of this board. Thank you to Stuart Ashens, of course, for lending it to me and allowing me to break it, more or less, or make it worse, but I'll have a go at fixing it. But I wanted to add though, if you're not a patron but you're enjoying the videos, I'd like you to consider one thing, and I'm not asking you to be a patron. However, I have a Just Giving at the moment. I'm going to be running in the Oxford Half Marathon for a very worthy cause for Tomley House, which is a local charity who provides a safe place for children of all abilities, or people of all abilities really, to do different activities and experience new things in a safe place. And if you enjoy the videos, I would ask you to consider having a look at the Just Giving and maybe give whatever you can afford, few quid. Every little bit helps. So thank you so much for that, and have a great weekend if it's still the weekend, and if it's the week you're watching, I hope you've had a good day. Speak to you soon.